Some properties there you will not need a permit for a basic tent, basic generator, basic bathroom trailer. If you are in a more suburban area, or, and here's a big one, if your neighbor hates you,
It's true.
you need to make sure that all of your I's are dotted and all of your T's are crossed.
What's up, Chillas? Today we are with Janice Carnevale. She is the owner of Bellwether Events, and we are breaking it down on at-home weddings, the myths, the misconceptions, everything that you need to know about it. So Janice, welcome to Bridechilla.
Thank you. I'm so thrilled to be here.
Tell us about Bellwether Events and how you got started in it, because you really do kind of focus more at home weddings and micro weddings.
Yeah, thank you. So I've been working on weddings in the DC area since 2002. First, I started off at a dinner cruise ship, and then I made a great transition to off-premise catering sales. And that's where I really cut my teeth on weddings and learned how to build events from the ground up. I founded Bellwether Events in 2006. And between 2010 and 2012, I did a handful of home weddings that were all very different and very crazy. And my friends encouraged me to put that knowledge into a book to share with other people. So I did that. And that's how the Elegant at-Home Wedding came to be in 2013. And we do all kinds of weddings, but we definitely have a niche and have a specialty with the home weddings.
And we'll have a link to the book in our show notes in the description, so make sure you check that out as well. And Janice, correct me if I'm wrong, we have a special connection outside of just wedding industry and Bridechilla. Are you not friends with Chris Fafalius, a fellow podcaster of mine at Evergreen Podcasts?
Yes, I have known Chris since I couldn't drink alcohol. I have known Chris and his and his band for a very long time. I went to school. I did not go to Duquesne with Chris. I went to Pitt with Steve. I've known them a very long time, and Chris is the best. I love his music podcasts, and he's just a great guy. And their band is still awesome. I still go see them all the time.
Yeah, he's actually going to be touring with Wheatus coming up. And how this all kind of came about was I got to be fortunate to be a guest on his show, One Hit Thunder. If you're into one hit wonders, it's a great podcast to check out. Sometimes the one hit wonder artist actually does come on the show. So each episode is a deep dive. And you had seen that I was a guest on the show. And that's how he kind of started to figure this out. So shout out to Chris Fafalius from Evergreen Podcasts and One Hit Thunder. So with that, why should we choose to have an at-home wedding?
Well, I think that there are two main emotions that are driving and cultural kind of things that are driving the uptick in home weddings. First is nostalgia. Nostalgia has been driving purchasing decisions for a few years now, for a decade or so now. And so, why spend a ton of money on a venue that you have no connection with when you can get married at home, and then share that with all your loved ones. And then secondly, I do think that the American culture in particular, and I know you have a worldwide audience, so please let me caveat all of this in the beginning by saying that I'm here primarily as an expert in luxury American home weddings and tented weddings. And so things might be a little bit different if you are not in that market or not in that space. But I do think that there is a strong desire in the American wedding culture to have something that no one else has. And so when you have a property where you can get married and no one else will ever get married there, set aside maybe a sibling or a cousin, I think that that is a big draw for people. And then, kind of on the logistical side of things, sometimes it allows you to have a really big guest list. But that's really kind of like a secondary decision, I think, for some folks, versus the really emotional decisions of the nostalgia of getting married at home, as well as the desire to have something truly unique and personal.
And like when we say backyard wedding, two different images can come to mind, right? You can say that and you can picture this elegant, romantic backyard kind of garden wedding, or if you live by the coast, or you are just picking up a bunch of pizzas or having it delivered, or potluck and sitting at random picnic tables and whatever. And so What is your take on that and how to kind of, I don't know, navigate when deciding how casual or how elegant you're going to go when you do a backyard wedding?
So I think there's a lot of this. I promise you, I'm getting to the point. There's a lot of flack in the vendor side of the wedding industry about these numbers that get published about the average cost of weddings. And it's usually around
Mm,
35, 40K. Well, the reason that that number exists is because there are a ton of people who are putting drinks in a cooler and popping up a tent that could probably blow away, in a light breeze. And doing a potluck meal. And there is nothing wrong with that. It is perfectly lovely and can still be extremely heartfelt and extremely sentimental and extremely personal to have a casual, low investment home wedding. But I do think that, and I know that you talk about this movie all the time on this podcast because I am a regular listener, but the
oh,
1991 Steve Martin, Father of the Bride
oh,
movie, I do
yes.
think really is a cultural touchstone for not only the elevation of the home wedding, but other things too. I do think that was when we did kind of see this movement away from punch and cake in the church basement or casual gatherings at your parents' backyard, no matter the size of the house, after your religious ceremony. And I do think that that movie really is a pivotal moment in the changing of the American wedding culture, particularly with being very forthright about expenses and the time
Yeah.
invested, and also that people should hire wedding planners, to be honest.
As I say, having Franck, that was, I think you're absolutely right. That is a pivotal moment in how it changed. And some people don't realize how much pop culture does influence, and that you nailed it. Like that movie really does
Yeah.
change the game.
I actually had a father of the bride once who called me Frank the whole time. I was not offended. I was delighted. And I know that a movie that came out in 1991 might not be on the radar of our friends in Gen Z and Gen Alpha, but please go check it out. It's so much fun.
Yeah, please do. It's so good. And the original, if you like black and white nostalgia with Elizabeth Taylor, doesn't hurt either. But yeah, the Steve Martin, Kimberly Williams, Paisley, oh, so good. Um, but you just brought up a point that I definitely wanted to lead with, and that is the misconception that a backyard wedding, you should do it because it's inexpensive. And that's not necessarily the case.
Right. I think, if you are going to go the more casual route, then it can be less expensive. But if you are looking to recreate the hospitality of a traditional wedding venue at your home, that is not going to be inexpensive. In fact, I think, in my book, I think I say something like you should really expect to spend $1,000 per guest. I think that if you were looking at it kind of from a macro view, that you're probably going to spend 25% more at a luxury home wedding versus a turnkey venue like a hotel or even a event venue that is not turnkey, which we have a lot of in DC. I know not every market has historic homes and museums, and a lot of people only have the choice of like a country club or a hotel. We just have a lot of other options here.
But yeah, I mean, estates are gaining popularity a lot. It was on your website, you had put that the most expensive aspect of your wedding is the guest.
Yeah.
Can you break all of that down? Because it once you get to the breakdown, it's true.
Yeah. Thank you for looking at my website. I appreciate that, Leah.
Oh, welcome.
So a guest needs an invitation. A guest needs a save the date. A guest needs probably a seat on a transportation, vehicle, or they need to be received by valet. Not necessarily. Sometimes you can, people can self-park. A guest has to sit at your ceremony. The guest has to be fed and watered for 5 hours. They have to sit at your table. That table has a linen. That table has a centerpiece. It is not just the catering cost. It is not just the $40 for your alcohol per person and the $250 per person for catering. All of the infrastructure that goes into your event is impacted by the guest count. There are very few what I would call fixed costs. The cost of your planner, the cost of your entertainment, the cost of your photographer. Those folks do not necessarily change their costs based on your head count. But there are
Yeah.
many, many other vendors that do.
So with the guests, because I've always said in the show, and I know you listen, so you know I say this every time. Like my least favorite part is the guest list because you have to narrow it down. Even if you're narrowing it down to 200 people, you're still narrowing it down, right? So when we are looking to be both cost effective and looking at the size of what the home wedding is, because we know when you walk into a venue and you talk to the venue coordinator, you know it's going to be a room that seats 50 or seats 300 or whatever the space is. But when it comes to a home wedding, that's a lot harder to determine because you're not generally hosting parties there unless it's an estate, I guess, that has hosted parties before. So how do we kind of determine what the seating could look like for that
Yeah.
so that we can then decide our guest list?
Right. Great question. So the smartest way to determine what your property can accommodate is to bring out a reputable tent company to do a site survey. And they will come out. You might have an idea. Oh, I want the ceremony to be here. I want the cocktail hour to be by the pool. I want the dinner reception tent over here on this hill. You might have all kinds of ideas, and that is great. And they will hear you out and they will take measurements. They have laser levels that can tell you the grade of the property. A lot of people think, oh, this is flat. And then the tent survey guy comes out and he's like, no, this has a 2.5 foot grade. Like you're going to have to do a leveled floor, which is tens of thousands of dollars. So
Oof.
I know, yeah, floor hidden cost flooring.
Yeah.
So a site survey from a tent company will give you an idea of how big of a tent will fit. And then you can take that tent size, and the tent company might give you a floor plan, a sample floor plan. If you have a planner engaged, which I strongly recommend, they might also be able to give you a quick sample floor plan based on the size of the tent. My book has a couple of sample floor plans, and there is math that you can do to kind of give yourself an idea of how many guests fit in how much square feet.
Okay, so you did actually just bring up my next point, and that is hidden costs, because there are so many in wedding planning in general, but it's a whole other level when it comes to a backyard home wedding. So what are, aside from the floor, because that's a great one, right? If you want a dance floor, if you're not going to be barefoot in the grass, which most people probably do not want to be, what are things that we need to consider?
Okay, I have a long list, so bear with
Okay.
me.
Okay.
First, I just want to make sure that that folks understand that when I say floor, I mean a floor for the entire tent. I don't just mean the 21 by 21 square that gets set up in front of your DJ or gets set up in front of your band. You should strongly consider putting a floor down in your tent, whether the ground is level or not. If it's not level, then you definitely have to have a leveled floor, and it's basically built on scaffolding. And you'll want to consider, are the guests going to enter at a flat level, or are the guests going to have to walk upstairs to get to your tent because of the grade of the floor? So that's like a slightly aesthetic consideration. If the ground is relatively level, then you can put in an unleveled floor, and that is done with pieces of wood sometimes, or also there's interlocking pieces of plastic. But the reason to invest in a floor is because it is an insurance policy. It is insurance policy against rain earlier in the week of your wedding, it is also an insurance policy against rain the day of your wedding. Because this is a situation where you are not just looking at the forecast for one day, you are looking at the forecast for a week. So that is what flooring means to me. And like I said, that's why it costs $10,000 and up. And let me just say real quickly, hopefully, if you have engaged an experienced planner, there are no hidden costs. They will be able to, walk you through all those things. But what I usually refer to this kind of section is like the unsexy infrastructure costs that no one really likes cutting a check for, but they know that they have to do it in order to really give their guests a great experience. So
yeah, it's unsexy to be stuck in a crap situation the day of because you didn't plan accordingly.
Yes, no, absolutely. That is probably the biggest hidden cost is what if you have to implement an inclement weather plan, and how much are you, bleeding the week of the wedding to get, the extra tents, the extra sidewalls. If it's hot out but it's raining, you're enclosing the tent, you're probably going to want to run an air conditioner. Flip side, you might need a heater if the temperatures are getting really low. Inclement weather plans are extremely expensive to put out, to execute, to invoke. And so that is definitely something that no one likes having to do, unfortunately.
But no matter where you're having your wedding, whether you're having it outside or at a venue, like I think it was on brides.com I had read one time where it said, have the rain plan before the sunshine.
Yes, no, when you are doing a venue search, you have to love the rain plan almost as much as you love plan A. If you don't, then that's probably not the right venue for you. And if stressing about the weather is going to be something that you do every single day of your engagement for 9 months, 12 months, 18 months, just book an indoor venue. Like, don't do it. Like, don't do that to yourself. Like, truly, like,
even if you have a casual backyard wedding, like we said, like the potluck or pizzas delivered, whatever, what are you going to do if it does rain that day? Is everyone going to be able to shove inside the house and you're going to be okay with that? Like,
yeah, that is what you have to consider. If you're planning on, not putting up a structure tent, if you are not really making a plan B for a casual wedding at your home, they're going to be inside. And what happens when that happens? Things get dirty, things get broken, things disappear because people are terrible.
It's true. Sorry. No, we brought up on the show before. People like to steal centerpieces for some reason, and it's annoying.
Yeah. And the other thing that happens is, and this is, going back to all the unsexy things, your residential toilet is not designed for 50, 100 people to be hitting it for 6 hours straight. It's not.
Mm-hmm.
So that's an issue. When you have to move everybody inside.
No, that kind of actually skips us ahead a little bit with the logisticals, because like bathroom facilities are important. So I'm glad you just said that, because I was going to say, how important is it that we have like porta potties and that on set? But it is. Like, if you only have 1 or 2 bathrooms and you're inviting 50 plus guests, I mean, even 20, I think is kind of like pushing it. What's the good rule of thumb of how many facilities we should have per person? And there are nicer porta potties. Like, I've been to some nice outdoor garden events and stuff, and like you can get nicer ones.
Yeah, we call them trailers because people are afraid. Yes. People are terrified of the PP word. So
I agree. They're trailers. They're sexier than a porta potty.
So yeah, and that's a great question, Leah. So my rule of thumb is to get the biggest trailer that can fit and that you can afford. I love my bathroom trailer rental suppliers. I love them. But they will tell you that like a 2 and 2, 2 on the men's side, 2 on the women's side is enough for 400 people. It is not. It is not. It is not. It is not. So you want really to get the biggest one that fits, and the and the biggest one you can afford. And that will help alleviate people standing in line, because where they're standing in line? Outside. Probably, like they're outside of the trailer, on the steps or waiting at the bottom of the steps to get into the trailer. It's not covered from rain. It's not covered from sun. And it's exposed, to all the elements, unless you decide to put the trailer in its own little tent, which I have also done. So I think that get the biggest one that you can. And this is really part of, we're all over the place, and I'm so excited because this is how it goes. But with this comes into, where is the trailer going to go on your property, and when does it need to be delivered? If it needs to be delivered before the tent, then you're paying for that trailer for a week, unfortunately. But you still keep it locked, and you do get a nice porta potty with a hand washing sink for your installation teams. And they use the porta potty during the week during the installations leading up to the wedding day. And then we will unlock and turn on that restroom trailer on the wedding day for your guests.
Oh, that's good to know. I never knew how that whole process worked. I've just gone to events that had it, and I just assumed that shows up the day before, and but that's good to know.
It might.
It's a good chunk of your budget.
Yeah, it's definitely, you're going to spend a few $1,000s in restroom trailers. And I actually have had to put restroom trailers in multiple locations because sometimes this is a property that is so large that they've been in the car or on the bus for 45 minutes. The guests have been traveling for 45 minutes. They get to the property, they drop off their gift, they get a little welcome drink, and then you know what they want to do? They want to go to the restroom.
Freshen up, use the restroom. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So if your ceremony location is nowhere near your reception location and your reception bathroom trailer, then you probably need to get this one can be smaller, another restroom trailer to cover just the ceremony aspect of the day.
But just not have it too close to the ceremony to where you might accidentally hear flushing during the vows.
No, you raise a good point. Like if it was in this particular scenario, it was like behind a copse of trees, it was well hidden, it was the noise was masked, but you need to consider, do I need to turn off fans, generators? Do I need to turn off noisy things in the area of where the ceremony is being had, or when toasts are being given? I will very often turn off tent fans when toasts are being given because they're noisy. Yeah. And you can hear, they have a microphone, you can hear them, but it's just better if you just click off those fans for a couple minutes.
And that sucks for your videographer to edit later, trying to drown that out to get the speeches.
I'm sure that's true.
I'm going to think about the audio and video aspect of that. Can we go back to weather for a second? Because we started talking about the rain and that, but there is rain, there is heat, there is cold. What are the different things that we definitely need to be considering with these outdoor weddings?
Yes, that's so true. Rain is not your only weather challenge. You hit on most of them. You left off wind, which is common for folks to not think about wind. In the heat, what I always remind folks is that setup and installation go slower. The staff is just moving slower if it's really hot. So you need to either allot more time or hire more staff to make sure that all that gets done on time. And then obviously, if it's very hot, you want to be taking care of your guests, making sure that there's always water available for them. Maybe it's giving them sunglasses when they arrive, or parasols, or popsicles. I've done popsicles at the end of a ceremony to help folks, cool down. It could be even wet washcloths that you see at fancy places. I'm sure there's a real terminology for that other than just wet washcloth, but
we'll just say fancy washcloth for now.
Yes, exactly. Cooling. I'm sure it's a cooling cloth. That's probably what they call it.
Probably something more like that, but
And then, you can get air conditioning, but here's the thing. It's really expensive. And the only way that it works is if you drop your tent sidewalls, because otherwise you're just air conditioning the whole world. So if you don't want to drop the tent sidewalls, then don't invest in air conditioning. You can still get tent fans. I recommend the ones that are affixed to the tent poles, not the ones that stand on the ground. The ones that are freestanding on the ground are much louder, and they are quite an eyesore. One thing to keep in mind when you are renting fans and maybe you're adding them last minute because there was a temperature spike, is that fans like that draw a lot of power, like a lot of power.
Hmm.
So you need to make sure that your generator that you've already ordered for your catering, for your band, for your lighting, it can also handle the additional needs of those fans.
Make sure you have power available, period. Like that there's no access point to get even the generator and other forms of power. Like this is not going to be your venue.
Yeah, power is, again, going back to the unsexy things that we have to pay for to build this infrastructure. Generators are right up there with the bathroom trailers in terms of unfun expenses. And I have learned a lot about generators over the years. And, they are not just turned on from 6 to 11 when your event is on. They are on during setup. They're on during installations to test lighting, to test the fans, to do sound checks. You need the generator rental company is going to ask you how long you're using it for because they are going to fill it with a certain amount of fuel. And we do not want the fuel to run out. So you need to tell them double, like 12 hours minimum on the fuel. Because if you are on a big property, you're probably not super close to a place where you can go buy diesel.
Wow, things I never would have thought about.
Girl, when your DJ stops playing because the generator has run out with like an hour to go,
And that's
no one,
also
no one.
money gone.
Yep, exactly. So it's important to think about the generators. You might need a couple in different places. Generators also come with these things called spider boxes, and the spider boxes are basically used to distribute the power. So if your catering tent is 100 feet away from the band, you can probably still use the generator. Use one generator. You're just going to have a spider box on a long cord to distribute the power to the two different places.
Hey couples, it's Leah from Bridechilla. Planning a wedding is so exciting, but let's be real, it can also be crazy stressful. What if a hurricane hits your venue or your photographer ghosts you? Don't let unexpected disasters derail your dream day. Brightco Wedding Insurance has your back. They cover everything from property damage to vendor cancellations, lost deposits to extreme weather. Seriously, they've thought of everything. Plus, it's super affordable. Head over to bright.co/Bridechilla to get a quote in minutes and get back to the fun stuff, like cake tasting. That's brite.co/Bridechilla. Brightco, because even Bridechillas deserve some peace of mind. So there's a few other unsexy things that we have to hit upon because I think they're so important, and that is permits and parking and all those other kind of logistical good things, but can be nightmares also if you're not prepared. So what should we do to consider all of this?
So, permits is really going to give you exposure to the most granular level of government bureaucracy in your neighborhood. So congratulations and good luck. Every county is different. I know, Leah. Every county is different, and you are just going to have to do some internet research, and then you're going to have to make some calls. You're going to have to take detailed notes on those calls and make sure you know who you spoke to, because you might get a different answer the next time you speak to someone.
Yeah, you can't just set up this huge tent with generators in the bathroom and the city not know. That's not going to fly.
So if you're in a more suburban area, absolutely. If you are out, we have horse country out here, right? And so, and we have farm country out here. So out here, I mean, like within 90 minutes of DC. And so
rural area. Yeah.
Right. So, some properties there, you will not need a permit for a basic tent, basic generator, basic bathroom trailer. If you are in a more suburban area, or, and here's a big one, if your neighbor hates you.
It's true.
You need to make sure that all of your I's are dotted and all of your T's are crossed.
Oh, yeah.
So
unless
that's
you want cops
permits
to hang out your wedding too.
No one likes that, Leah. No one likes the police arriving. No one likes it. Every
Have you
place
had
has
an
an.
incident where, have you had an incident?
Oh
Yeah.
yeah.
Can you tell us a quick story?
So it leads into what I was just about to say, and it's the
Oh.
noise ordinances.
Hmm.
It's the noise ordinances. Every location has a noise ordinance. Usually it's 11. If it's 10, maybe get married somewhere else. Because no one wants the party to end at 10, unless
Yeah.
it's after daylight savings and it's sunset, and that's a whole other conversation. But so every place has a noise ordinance. And so basically what happened to me once was that the police showed up. It was about 10:30 and they were very kind. And they were like, you have a noise ordinance at 11. And I said, sure do. Here's my timeline. We are turning it all off. Everyone will leave. And they were completely satisfied with that. And we did. We turned it off at 11 like you're supposed to. And there was no issue. But no one wants that conversation. So you need to know when your noise ordinance is. If you do have nearby neighbors that will be impacted by the noise, if you do have cranky neighbors, you need to warn them what's happening,
Or
about
possible
the
wedding
wedding.
crasher neighbors.
Well, I mean, if that's what it takes to keep them from calling, the non-emergency line, then that's fine. They can have a beer. But, it is important to warn nearby neighbors about what's happening, because it's going to be a lot of traffic on your street, with the installations, with the load in, with the load out. If you have guests driving there, if you have valet parking, like your neighbors are going to be inconvenienced, not just on the wedding night, but, the week leading up to it. Um, and also, this is a side note, but we did fireworks once, and the neighbor came by the next day and complained that it spooked their horses. And I felt badly about that. Like, that was not something I had thought of at that point in time. This was over a
Right.
decade ago. And I thought, okay, what could I have done to mitigate that? And I just think it comes down to, having open communication with your neighbors about what the plans are that might impact them.
Yeah, never would have thought about. I mean, you think about fireworks with like dogs and cats. And so even that, think about that because you can't control like 4th of July, but if you're doing it outside of a normal firework time, that does impact animals and children and babies.
Yep.
Don't piss off
Yeah.
a mom that just gave birth either.
Right.
She probably got that
Absolutely.
baby down. But with
Absolutely.
parking, you mentioned valet being an option. And if you don't want to spend the money on valet and you're like, oh, well, people can just street park, you're also risking people having to, one, take up all the street parking for all the neighbors, but possibly having to park blocks away, having to walk. If the weather's crap, then they're having to walk in that crap weather.
Yeah. So a lot of what I talk about in the book and a lot of the unsexy costs is keeping your guests safe. And that includes them walking to and from their car, wherever that car may be. Maybe it's in a field on your property, or maybe it's down the street. Does your street have sidewalks? Do they have is there street lights? Are they going to be safe walking back? And I don't mean like getting mugged. That is not what I mean by safe. I mean, like, are they going to be able to walk, on a safe, secure path down back to their car, with that is somewhat lit, at the end of your event. And so, oft I have done so many things. I have had people park at a nearby church or a nearby school, and we shuttled them a couple of blocks because there was no street parking really option. I've done valet to a near, like a block away parking lot. We've had parking on site, that was self park. We've had parking on site that was valet. And we obviously have brought buses in, either whether it's directly from the hotel or directly from the church or from a nearby parking lot. And you really just have to figure out what's best for your guests, what's going to keep your guests safe, what's going to make them feel taken care of and accommodated. But here, Leah, is what people forget. And that is that you also have a ton of vendors parking at your wedding, like dozens of cars. If you have a 150, 200 person wedding, there's going to be 50 catering staff at your wedding,
Yep.
approximately. Your entertainment, your photo video, your planner, your florist is going to come in and out. Your makeup artist is going to come in and out. And not only are these going to come in personal cars, but there might be big trucks that are staying on
Yes.
site. If you are, a distance away from that warehouse, from that catering kitchen, that truck is just going to stay there. It's not worth it for them to drive back and then come back at the end of the night. So you have to consider all of those vehicles as well. And my solution to that more recently, has been it's helpful if you have valet already on the line item for the budget, but I will add a parking director to my valet contracts. And that person, just one person, and they arrive before all the other vendors are going to start to arrive, except for maybe hair and makeup. I have a personal conversation with hair and makeup about where they need to park. But because those folks are getting in way early, right? But
Way early.
parking director, maybe he comes at noon, and then he is there and he makes sure that all your vendors and their trucks and their flatbeds and their vans are all parking in the places where you want them to park, and they're not interfering with guest parking, they're not interfering with aesthetics, etc.
That is an excellent point. I do agree with you 1,000% that it isn't considered. And why would someone consider it, I guess, if you haven't worked in hospitality,
Right.
and you haven't ever, planned a party or an event outside of a wedding either. But I'm so glad you brought that point, because it's something I think everyone should know and consider. Be considerate
Yep.
for the people that are going to be taking care of you all day.
Exactly.
But I'm glad you said vendors, because that is my next point. You're doing a beautiful job of segueing, and you don't even know my order. I'm kind of trying to walk us through the whole day. But with vendors, you have mentioned, I love that you mentioned the parking director. That's a great one. What other vendors do we need to be considering that's going to be on site for our home wedding? There's obvious like photog and video if you're hiring that, but are there any other ones that people may not be considering?
You probably want to have a representative from the tent company there. They can assist you with turning on and off heaters, turning on and off fans. If your tent company did your lighting, they might be helping you dim lights. And then if you have to roll up or roll down your sidewalls, they would do that for you as well. If you brought in a separate lighting company, then someone from the lighting company should be there as well. Again, to help you with dimmers, to help you with any issues with like the power draw. Those are a couple that come to mind off the top of my head. If it is a large property and you're going to be engaging with golf carts to help get folks around, that is something I usually rent through the valet company. You don't have to, but the nice thing is that then I can get dedicated drivers, and we're not asking your brother or your uncle to be the golf cart driver for the night, because that's not fun for them. So those are a couple that come to mind right away.
No, the tent one's really good, because what if they're, say, the wind, somehow it's not secured enough and something starts to go awry? The professionals on hand to help salvage that as soon as possible.
Yeah,
You're not
no,
having like 10 groomsmen trying to hold it up and figure it out.
I have lost a tent. It's a great story. It was, luckily no one was in it, but it was set up. It was Friday night, and you might be familiar with this from the Midwest. We were not familiar with this weather term at all. 15 years ago or so, we had a derecho come through, which is a thunderstorm with hurricane force winds. And they're more common in like the plains states. And it came through, and I had two tents set up. I had a frame tent and a pole tent, and the pole tent came down. The top itself was actually ripped in half. I don't think it came down necessarily because of the way that it was installed. It just literally sheared
The wind.
the top in half. The frame tent stayed up, but all the decor that was in the frame tent came down. And I was out there, as soon as it was safe to drive out there, we went out there at midnight, my husband and I and my assistant and her partner at the time. And we were out there at midnight, and we were on the phone with the tent company, letting them know, like, okay, this is what we need to replace. This is what is still standing. And they actually also brought the house lost power. And so they brought an extra generator. to help alleviate the fact that the house had lost power.
There's
So
something
yeah.
to consider
Mhm.
also. Blow a major fuse, there's a power outage in the area. What's your plan B?
Yeah, it's, I've lost power at a variety of different types of venues over time, and it's tough. It's tough when you can't play music. It's a different world now with, Bluetooth speakers and cell phones and stuff like that. But it's you're really considering all of the possible things that can go wrong. You're planning for the worst and hoping for the best. And if that is not your vibe, and if that is not your personality, then like this type of wedding planning might not be for you. And you just have to have a team around you that can pivot, that can think rationally and pivot, even if you're going to be emotional, and that's fine. It's understandable to be emotional about changing plans you've invested so much time and so much money in, but you do want to listen to the people who are giving you professional, experienced advice, and if you can, go along with what they're suggesting.
Can we talk about for a second? Because I feel like you'd feel as strongly as I do about this. It doesn't matter how casual or high end, how small, even elopements, the importance of a more structured timeline for your day.
Yeah.
Can we talk about this? Because I think a lot of people think that the timeline doesn't really matter, but it does for so many reasons.
Yes, I think there's two ways to look at this, emotional and logical. Again, emotional is when I hear people say, I don't want a regimented timeline, I don't want a stuffy, scripted wedding day. What I think they're really saying is, I don't want to do the traditions that don't matter to me. And that is fine.
Yeah.
Quiet cake cutting, no garter, no bouquet, no first dance, no toast. I don't care. It doesn't
Yeah.
matter to me.
All
I
for
just
it.
need to know what you I just need to know what you want to do, right? And
Mm-hmm.
then the second part of it is um your vendors are on a contract that ends. So
Yeah.
you might think that there's no timeline, and especially when you're at home, it's like, oh, we're just going to hang out. There is no end time. Babe, there is an end time. Your
Yeah.
photographer has an end time. Your catering company has an end time. Now, if you want to stay and you want to leave the lights on and you want to get out some disposable cups and set out some consumption ice and put the beverages in a certain place, we can plan for that. We can arrange that in advance and make that a comfortable, fun time to have a little miniature after party. But the catering team is going to basically, for the most part, break down and go home. Your photographer is leaving. Your entertainment is leaving. Your girlfriend Janice is leaving. And so, you know, we can absolutely set it up so that you can have this never ending wedding night, which I do understand the appeal of that. But that is something that has to be planned for.
And if you have them stay, it's going to cost you extra. Keep that in
Yeah.
mind with your budget.
And it's always a higher rate. Like, as an example, if your photographer was $1,000 an hour beforehand, they're probably $1,000 a half hour, making that change on the night of.
So obviously you're going to be partial to this being a wedding and event planner, but let's discuss the importance of having a wedding planner or a coordinator for your home wedding.
Yeah, no. If you've never hosted an event of this size, of this magnitude, of this investment, and you've never done anything like that at this property, then I do think you should seek professional assistance. Um, you need to I've already kind of talked about how important it is to know which vendors you need to hire in terms of generators, bathroom trailers, tents, lighting, things of that nature, valet, buses. We've talked about that. And we've briefly touched on, the installation process. But that is a week-long process with multiple large vehicles coming in and out of your home. All
Yeah,
of those
setup and
people.
tear down isn't just the day of. And I think people think that.
No,
Not
it's
everybody,
definite.
but I think a lot of
Right.
people assume.
Most of the installations I've done for at-home events is a full week. Maybe you're starting Tuesday, but like it's better to start Monday and be done early than to start Tuesday and be delayed a day by rain and then you're way behind on Saturday morning. So a professional planner can help you figure out the restroom trailer arrives on this day. The generators arrive on this day. The tent starts on this day. They'll finish the floor on the first day. They'll put up the tent on the second day. They'll cover it with the tarp on the third day because we don't want everyone to be so hot under the clear top when they're setting up. Friday, if we're lucky, we are doing equipment drop and we might be dropping tables and we might be popping tables and we might be setting up chairs. It kind of depends. Or we're doing, close to the final lighting touches. And someone who has done this a number of times can help you through that process so that it is less time consuming and less stressful for you. And they're going to make sure that you are taking care of your teams with your porta potty for installation days, with your meals for like if that installation crew leaves to go get lunch, when are they coming back? When are they finishing their job that day? And, I am there every day during installations. I basically am moving into the property and like living out of my car with my, hopefully, Wi-Fi or Bluetooth hotspot, my personal hotspot on my phone and, working on my computer while I'm watching all these folks set up all the things for your wedding. A home wedding, I'm probably going to the property 10 different times during the planning process. Like a typical venue, I'm going there twice, maybe 3 times. So it's a lot to supervise. It's a lot of institutional knowledge. And you want to have someone who's your advocate because when the floor is delivered on an 18-foot flatbed instead of a 24-foot box truck, and they can't make the turn around the fountain in your driveway, someone has to be there advocating for you and forcing these delivery guys to come up with a solution that works for everybody involved.
When the swans aren't cooperating in the pool, to bring it back to Father of the Bride, who's going to help it? What are some common pitfalls that you haven't already mentioned that we should be aware of?
I want to talk about lighting, and I touched upon this a little bit earlier when we talked about parking, but newsflash, the sun is going to go down, and then it's going to be
newsflash.
and then it's going to be dark everywhere. So how are you lighting?
Yeah.
Like, yes, you have lighting in the tent, right? And sometimes I think like, why do we install tents? And we install tents to have something to put lighting on. Like aside from, shade from the sun or cover from the rain, the tent is really there in a lot of reasons to have something to hang lighting on because you don't want to eat dinner in the dark. You don't really want to dance in the dark. You want it to be dim, but you don't want it to be pitch dark. But once you leave that tent, what does the lighting look like? How is it lit to the bathroom? Is it lit to the catering tent? Is it lit back to the parking lot or to the valet station or to the bus pickup spot? This again goes back to safety and making sure that your guests feel safe, that they're not stepping in a hole and falling down and twisting their ankle. We really want your guests to feel safe, to be safe, and to feel, well taken care of when they're on your property. You invited them to your home because you wanted them to love this property as much as you do and to be a part of an integral memory at that property. And so you really want to level up the hospitality when those guests are there. I also think
that's true. The liability factor, you have to consider that.
This is a small aside. I've had a few people tell me, well, Janice, it's going to be a full moon, and the full moons are really bright here.
Full moons also bring out the crazy, FYI. So if you're by the water, watch the tide. There's a lot with full moons.
I looked at them and I said, if you get sued for someone falling in the dark, the judge is going to laugh at but sir, it was a full moon. Yeah, so lighting is really important. You don't want to miss those safety factors. Um, I also think that one thing that happens a lot is that the homeowner is like, oh, I want to power wash this. I want to swap out this garden. I want to build another koi pond. And all of a sudden there's all this property investment going on, and that's fine as long as it's done in time. But also, that's not my budget.
Mm-hmm.
That is a separate budget that has nothing to do with me. But
Right?
people will get a little nuts like with the property investments. And that's, again, it's not my budget, but it's somebody's budget.
And then you need insurance. Have insurance.
Yes, you absolutely need to have insurance. You need to have if you probably you're going to get it through your homeowner's policy. That's probably the smartest thing to do. I am not an insurance professional. Um, so, but you need to make sure that that policy, if it's an extra rider or wherever you're getting the rider, it needs to start the day that the installations start, and it needs to go through the day that the installations end. Some of the upsides of a home wedding is that you can do things on Thursday and Friday and Monday, and you're not paying higher delivery fees for an in and out on a Saturday.
Hmm.
So that is really helpful, but that also means your event is technically lasting until Monday or Tuesday, whatever that last day is for the last, the last generator to leave, the last bathroom trailer to leave. So you do need to make sure that that policy covers all of that. And there is like a really good insurance guy. He sells insurance to venues, but he will talk to a couple or parents and give them advice.
Oh,
Um,
nice.
and I think that, if you were making, a $150,000, $200,000, $250,000 investment in an at-home wedding, like you need to make sure that you really do have all of the right coverage, for liability, for alcohol, for property damage, for personal injury. Like you want to make sure that all that is covered. And it's $1,000 probably for like a very, very comprehensive rider. And that is a drop in the bucket
Well, if
compared
you're
to
already spending
everything
all that,
else.
yeah, at least $1,000 for peace of mind.
Yep, exactly. It is peace of mind. That's for sure.
Stay tuned for part 2 of our episode with Janice Carnevale of Bellwether Events.